I've always been a skeptic. Ghosts, curses, haunted houses. I thought it was all just campfire stories. That was until we moved into the house that shouldn't exist. It all started like some kind of miracle. My wife, Emma, and I had been house hunting for months. Everything was either way too expensive, ridiculously small, or crammed right next to a noisy highway. We were about to give up. Then, one day, an email landed in my inbox. It was strange. No photos, just a few lines of text. Secluded country home, fully furnished, move-in ready. Quiet location, price negotiable. There was no sender's name, just an address. I almost deleted it, but Emma, ever the curious one, looked up the coordinates. They pointed to a place we'd driven past a dozen times, a quiet forest road about an hour outside of town. Here's the weird part. When we checked Google Maps, the location was empty. Street view showed nothing but trees and an old dirt path. No house, not a single building. But we couldn't shake the feeling. Curiosity got the better of us, so we drove out there that weekend. The road was just as the map showed, old, narrow, and shrouded in a thick, eerie mist. Low-hanging branches scraped against the windshield, like skeletal fingers trying to wave us away. As we neared the coordinates, my GPS suddenly froze. A spinning circle, and then a message. Location not found. And that's when we saw it. Sitting at the end of the path, perfectly still, was a 2-story white house. It looked like it had been waiting for us. It wasn't old or run down. It looked pristine, lived in. The lawn was neatly trimmed, a welcoming light glowed on the porch, and curtains hung in every window. But there were no power lines, no mailbox. And our car was the only one for miles. Taped to the front door was a small, handwritten note. All it said was, "Welcome home," no signature. We pushed the door open, and the inside was perfect, spotless, incredibly quiet. Every single room was fully furnished, and all the clocks on the walls were ticking in perfect, unnerving synchronization. We opened the fridge, and it was stocked with fresh fruit, milk, a loaf of bread. The oven was even slightly warm, as if someone had just finished baking. But the thing that really gave me the chills was the photos. They were hanging on the walls in every room. All of them were pictures of the house itself, the same rooms, the same furniture. But the people in the photos, their faces were all blurred out. Every single one was just a smudge, like someone had dragged a thumb across a wet painting. Emma found it artistic. I found it deeply unsettling. Still, the price was too good to be true. We called the number left on the note and left a message. 2 days later, a woman called back. Her voice was calm, almost hypnotic. She introduced herself as Diane and said she handled properties that were off the grid. When I asked her why the house wasn't listed anywhere, she just laughed softly and said, "Some places prefer to be forgotten." Against my better judgment, we signed the papers a week later. The first few days were pure bliss. No sirens, no traffic, just the peaceful sound of the woods. But then the small things started. The clocks, once perfectly in sync, began ticking out of rhythm, creating a chaotic, disjointed beat throughout the house. At night, a faint humming sound would start up a low, constant electrical buzz, even though we were supposedly running on solar power. And then the rooms began to change. The first floor had 4 rooms when we moved in. I'm absolutely certain of it. But one morning I was walking down the hall and I saw a 5th door. It was just there. It looked like it had always been part of the house, same paint, same hinges, same door frame. But I knew with every fiber of my being that it hadn't been there the day before. My hand trembled as I turned the knob. I opened it slowly. Inside was a small, windowless room, and it was freezing cold. The walls were completely bare, except for one thing. Scrawled in faint pencil near the floor were 4 words: "You shouldn't be here." I slammed the door and ran to get Emma, but when she came to look, the writing was gone. The wall was perfectly clean. She told me I was just stressed, overworked from the move. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening. And that's when I heard it. Somewhere inside the walls, someone was walking. It wasn't the house settling or some animal in the attic. These were slow, deliberate footsteps, pacing back and forth from one end of the house to the other. Then the footsteps stopped, right outside our bedroom door. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. For what felt like an eternity, there was only silence. Then, a whisper, so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it, slithered through the crack under the door. Welcome home. By morning, the footsteps were gone. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself it was all in my head. But that evening, while Emma was taking a shower, I decided to investigate again. The hallway seemed longer than before, as if the house had stretched itself out during the day. And at the far end, where the new room had appeared, there was now another door. This one was different. It was older, made of dark wood, with a tarnished green brass handle. A wave of dread washed over me, but I had to know. When I opened it, a rush of cold, musty air hit me like a physical blow. Inside was a narrow staircase leading down into darkness, a basement. It wasn't on the floor plans. We never saw it during the walkthrough, but it was here now. I switched on my phone's flashlight and aimed it down the steps. The beam caught something metallic at the bottom. It was a tall, ornate mirror, framed in dark, carved wood. I crept down the stairs, my heart in my throat. I stepped closer, and for a terrifying second, I saw my reflection. And then, my reflection smiled, a wide, predatory grin that I wasn't making. I scrambled back up the stairs, my feet slipping, and slammed the heavy door shut. I told Emma what I saw, but she just looked at me with concern, convinced I was losing my mind. Until that night. We were lying in bed, the silence of the house pressing in on us. Suddenly, Emma whispered, "Did you leave the bathroom light on?" I shook my head. But when I looked, a dim glow was seeping from under our bedroom door. Then we heard them again. The footsteps, slow, deliberate. Coming down the hall, the doorknob began to turn. The door creaked open. And standing there, silhouetted in the dim light, was me. Or something that looked exactly like me. Same face, same pajamas I was wearing. It just stood there, watching us. Then, in a flat, monotone voice that wasn't mine, it spoke. "I told you. You shouldn't be here." The lights in the house flickered wildly, and when they came back on, it was gone. We didn't wait. We threw our things into bags in a frantic panic. But when we tried to leave, the GPS wouldn't load. It was like the forest itself was a maze designed to keep us in. It took us 6 agonizing hours to finally break free and find the main road. The number was disconnected. The next day, I went to the county records office. The address, the property. It didn't exist. There was no record of a house ever being built there. About a month later, I couldn't stand it anymore. But when we got to where the dirt road should have been, there was nothing. No road, no house. Just a dense, unbroken line of trees. It was gone. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. As we were about to turn the car around, my friend pointed at something glinting in the dirt right beside my door. I got out and knelt down. It was a brass doorknob, old and tarnished green. And when I picked it up, it was still warm.